So I will begin again at hello. The thing with hello, though, is that it comes with a projection of identity, right? When I say hello, how I speak, how I stand, what I wear, this projects an identity. What I'd like to do is take you through a journey of inquiry, an inquiry into identity. And through that inquiry, what I'd like to do also is touch upon our notions of beauty, nature, death, and choice. Who are we, right? Like, what is our innate nature? What is our conditioned nature? And what is our collective nature? These are questions that artists pose, right? But who am I before I start talking about identity? Well, I'm a lot of different sort of people, but one of the things I do is I take pictures. I take pictures of what is supposedly beautiful and what is truly beautiful. There's no doubt about, there's no argument about something that's truly beautiful, right? Like, we don't question, we just sort of, it evokes an emotion, we go through like a physiological change. It really affects us. It's really funny how our very origin is somewhere in those stars. All of our collective identities began somewhere in those stars. My journey as a photographer, I believe, began in those stars. I was in Ladakh. I was camped out next to a river. It's a tributary of the Sindhu. And I was sleeping outside my tent on a bed of rocks in the middle of the night, all by myself in the wilderness. And there was shooting stars in the sky and just the most magnificent view. And these are the kind of things that images don't do justice to, right? They can bring you close, but they can't make you feel what you feel when you're there, right? From there, we go to what is the supposedly beautiful. There's a reason why I only put my European work here and only my overseas work here. And the reason was that when you look at these images, it provokes a judgment, right? Some of you might think, oh, hey, this guy's so cool, he shoots internationally. Some of you might think, oh my God, this guy's so superficial, he's so pretentious, look at this sort of dark South Indian guy, you know, like subscribing to this sort of idea and conforming to this idea of beauty, which is contrary to our own existence or whatever, right? That was done on purpose. But when I talk about beauty, I'd also like to talk about light. Because light is interesting. It takes the exact same being, the exact same person, and as it moves and as it transforms, it changes the way we look at things. Light could be, you know, stark, and you look at the same person a different way. It could be soft, you could say the same person a different way. Light, for me, is the best metaphor for perception. If you're able to look at perception like light, like open our true sort of light from within, the way we perceive the world, the way we perceive notions and identities changes. Both of these identities, both of these people are real. Perhaps most of us, if not all of us, subscribe to both these identities of beauty, right? But the previous one was familiar. It's something that we knew, and we subscribe to that. But what about the unfamiliar? What about the abstract? Is that beautiful? What happens when something is morbid? Is that beautiful as well? Yeah, there we go. If we zoom in into the details of our body, right, like the smallest of things inside our body is beautiful. If we zoom out and look at the bigger picture and the perspective, that's beautiful as well. Our environment is beautiful. I think all we need to do is choose to pause and look at it. That boy there is the epitome for me, a symbol for humanity, right, of being human. So he would go out in the morning after Orion rises and goes up into the sky, and it's up there. In the middle of the night at 3 o'clock, he and his sort of, all the elders would go into the sea. They would, you know, go like 10, 15 kilometers into the sea and work really, really hard for hours and come back just after sunrise, just as we're waking up. 7 in the morning, we're waking up, barely, really grouchy, and these guys are coming back, right? With a handful of fish, perhaps, if they're lucky, even more, like a bigger load. They sell most of it. All this boy gets is a handful of fish to take back home as his salary, right? And what he does is the most beautiful thing, which is to take the biggest fish that he has, which just that one fish is perhaps weighs as much as the rest of the fish that he has, right, in his catch, or for his share. And he offers it to me, and he says, please take this, just because I went with them and I was spending time with them. For me, fishermen sort of represent, I think, humanity, but also the sea somehow represents life. The sea is, it can be incredibly tranquil, still. You see the sunrise, you see dolphins, you see reflections, and it can be incredibly beautiful. It can also be incredibly unrelenting and harsh and just incredibly morbid. These people brave all of this, they see it, but do you think they pause to notice or to appreciate the beauty or to appreciate the magnanimity of the sea? The romantic in me believes that they do. Despite going out there every day, despite seeing these things every day, I believe that they do appreciate this beauty or they do see this magnanimity, right? But life is very similar. If we were to do the exact same thing and choose to pause as we're going through and look at the small things, I think we will find beauty, whether it is superficial, apparent, not apparent. All we need to do is choose how we look at it. Well, it was supposed to be perhaps, well, it's better that you guys don't see it anyway, I suppose, because half of you perhaps were offended. The idea of the self, our image of ourself. These pictures are a friend of mine who's a dancer and who from the very outset when she was young, till she was in her mid-30s, did not believe that she was beautiful. She was a dancer, everybody around her thought she was incredibly beautiful, but for some reason, she didn't believe that she was beautiful. It took her 30 years to sort of convince herself or find sort of a spark of like beauty within her. I don't know what caused to reach to that point, but when she did reach that point, she asked me to come and take pictures of her. Some of you might sort of get offended by these images, right? Some of you might find these images sexual, pornographic, perhaps sensual. Some of you might see through all of that superficial and actually see a person inside. You might see this being on the inside. The true identity of the self is something that we always sort of question. There is another identity. Outside of the self, there's an identity that is the perceived identity. I'm not going to tell you anything about this project, because the whole idea is with every image, you get to know this person who's a human being a little bit better. I hope you connect with every image a little bit more with this person and sort of, as you connect, become more human because you get to know another human being and care and start caring. Why do we need to judge? Why do we need to put a person in a box? Why do we need, the moment we come across someone or an idea, to have judgment? Death, morbid, right? Like it's sort of, it can be sad, it can be tragic. Some of us have lost, people that are very close to us. Death to me is not negative. It isn't, I mean, sure, it's sad and tragic because it provokes the best and the worst in us. But it's also, if we choose to see it, somehow beautiful because it paves the way for creation. With death and our notion of death comes choice. I've always believed that we have absolutely no free will, right? We're here in this world, we're born alone, we'll die alone, we come, we'll meander through, and we have absolutely no control. Is that sort of a horrific thought, the idea that we have no control over our lives? I don't think so. I think it's really beautiful. We're in this river that's going to sort of take us on this journey, and the currents take us here and there. We do have a very tiny choice, though. But that's the choice that makes the difference. It's a micro choice. It's the choice of our state of mind. And we can choose to either enjoy this ride, enjoy the currents of this river, and pause as we go down this journey at every moment to appreciate every moment, or we don't, and then we just keep moving, and life passes. Why do we create? Why was there creation, right? Like these are questions, why is existence? These are questions that have existed since, I think Lucy was there, since we've known sentience, These are questions that have existed. But primarily, I think the reason we, at least artists or photographers or whatever media that we use, create is because we'd like to evoke, because we'd like to express, because we'd like to reflect. But in order to do that, sort of with integrity and actually mean it and feel it, and for it to be real, this evocation, I think we also need to feel ourselves. We need to be sensitive beings, right? We need to be sensitive to our own identity, to kind of sort of find out who we are ourselves, question these things, but also to sort of appreciate and be sensitive to other people's ideas and other people's identities and beliefs. Kenna, which is an idea that we're trying to give birth to, is an artist initiative. What we're trying to do is invite artists to collaborate, work in the same space together, and nurture inspiration, collaboration, and all of that. But primarily, what we'd like to do, whether it's domestic, international, or however, primarily raise these questions which are really, really important. Almost every single slide that I showed you, I was hoping that it drew a question. I was trying to end with a question. And the reason for that is existence itself sort of invites questions. And what we would like, and what I think artists do best, is to reflect reality, but also to question reality. And that's what we'd like to invite to do through Kenna. And I'll end where I began, which is with hello. Thank you. Thank you.